Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always, and I'm super pumped to have the one and only Chen on the show today, co-founder and CEO of Injective Labs. Prior to Injective, he was a researcher at Innovating Capital, working on trading strategies and protocol research. Before that, he was part of the NYU Blockchain Labs and has been working in the crypto industry since 2017. Nice and early. We love to see that. Eric also dropped out of NYU and currently has one of the best accounts on crypto Twitter, just putting out nothing but fire 24 hours a day. Eric Chen, pumped to have you on, my man. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Pumped to have you. You are a New York lad living in Manhattan, which is the absolute best, probably the best city in the world. I mean, pretty tough to debate against. You dropped out of NYU. That must have been crazy. I'm sure your parents, your friends, your family were like, give your head a shake. What are you doing? Walk me through that decision. What was that like dropping out of NYU to go work in crypto?
Yeah, I think the process for that was actually, pretty much a no-brainer for me personally. It was too good of an opportunity to pass up on. I think, if I start, full-time within the industry, just like 1 or 2 years late, I would have missed out on a lot of opportunity and just, be much later than like everyone else within the space. And on top of that, there were a lot of like very exciting and inspiring people to work alongside. So yeah, it didn't really take much of a consideration at all. I think it's, probably took much a longer time for people around me to, wrap their head around or like, to understand than for me to decide.
Walk me through some of those combos though, because again, this is something that I get asked. I didn't drop out of uni. I did my 4 years, but I mean, looking back at it, I would have been a good choice. Would have been probably the right choice to do. I loved uni. I had a blast. I don't know about learned a ton. Learned a lot on the qualitative side of things, right? The networking and conversations, partying, all that kind of good stuff, which I do think moves the needle in life. But on the quantitative side, definitely didn't learn as much as I would have liked to. And I'm sure that's part of the reason why you dropped out as well. You understood that you were able to grab some crazy working experience in a booming industry. But with that being said, what would you tell someone who has entrepreneurial spirit, who wants to grind, isn't really messing with uni at the moment and wants to drop out? Any words of advice, wisdom, things you wish you did differently?
Yeah, I would say like, for me, it was actually quite easy to convince, let's say like my parents and stuff like that, because there's essentially like a plan A and plan B. Injective Labs receive, like I think initial funding or like at least commitments. So that would be plan A. Plan B, it's like, it's fairly easy for me to get a job or continue, what my previous part-time job was. So that wasn't exactly like the biggest issue for like dropping out. I would say, like above all else, like education is still like extremely important.
Of course.
One of my, partial regret was definitely, not being able to like finish school or like take some grad courses I really wanted to take and, kind of force myself, like a, self-learning path. So I would say, unless, there are, absolute irrefutable reasons for you to drop out, definitely, staying in school is certainly, much more impactful and much more, high EV experience and path in the long run.
Yeah, well said there. Let's jump into Injective. Love the logo, by the way. Super clean. I mean, great setup. It's funny. You and I were talking about this before the show. Every office now has like a little media room. Like it's crazy. Every office I've been to in the last couple of years now has a media room for pods and video sessions, whatever the case may be. And I mean, before COVID, that was never a thing. So just a cool little side note there. But walk me through Injective before we get into the nitty gritty, the founding story, the vision, overview, ecosystems, key projects, all that stuff. And then we'll sort of pick and choose where we want to jump into as we move forward through the conversation.
Yeah, I think, Injective Labs started off as a fairly simple, mission. And that is, trying to democratize finance through decentralization and, providing like a permissionless and accessible platform for all. And obviously, like that is very much of a vague kind of direction. The more nuanced or like the more specific approach Injective Labs started off as utilizing a lot of the existing infrastructure, especially at that time where, you have like a resemblance of DEX, you have some very, very early nascent primitives within decentralized finance and, fairly nascent as well, Rails on and off ramps. One of the key, blockers or one of the key missing part was having like a fair and scalable and dynamic exchange infrastructure. And back then, like DEX was extremely gas intensive. It was, literally just slamming orders on top of an Ethereum order book with, no ways to scale it. And, they all understand that, it's almost impossible to trade. So Injective Labs simply, start off as trying to solve that problem by, figuring out the scalability layer, and more importantly, figuring out like the front-running resistant MVV-free type of solution to make sure that there is a viable infrastructure for any type of exchange-related applications in the most dynamic way possible. And to this day, Injective as an ecosystem and what Injective Labs focuses on has certainly changed a lot. It started off from like a blockchain with a lot of exchange-focused primitives into a very much sector-specific, generalized, semi-generalized at least, layer one blockchain built for financial applications. At this point, it's effectively identified as like an open, interoperable blockchain with a set of very, very powerful, next generation DeFi primitives and out of the box modules where different types of these protocols and applications can plug and play and integrate with. And these modules, include decentralized spot and derivatives exchanges, prediction market, binary options, lending, oracles, et cetera, much, much more.
That's crazy. So just to summarize, you and the team, in essence, built a blockchain specifically for finance.
Yeah.
And again, but did this stem from really just the old state of DeFi being built on Ethereum, such a shit show, like you said, crazy high gas prices. You're literally just slamming the ETH order book, and you guys were like, hey, this needs to change. It needs to be much leaner, more efficient. And that's why there was a need for a blockchain specific finance or a finance specific blockchain rather.
Yeah, I think it goes a lot beyond that. Initially, that was certainly our thought process, which is like, since EVM is obviously Turing complete and, it's just, like a very dynamic environment with a set of like pretty quirky, like free compiles, you can technically just have like L2 solution that has, almost like a synchronous environment or like a continuous environment, aka like very, very fast, like block production, and just call it a day. Host whatever set of applications that you want. But it very quickly became, a very, very significant issue because, within any type of generalized environment, the chips are stacked against DeFi applications because DeFi applications require kind of like a constant economics of scale for, a lot of the, core operations. It has, typically, for, let's say, order book exchanges, for example, it's usually, comparatively computationally light, but at the same time, extremely space intensive. So it kind of goes around, kind of like the general heuristic for, how like a gas economy would work for like any type of smart contract environment, not just for EVM.
Interesting.
So it requires kind of like the interference of like a built-in native exchange infrastructure that has, more like blockchain friendly mechanisms and also like a guarantee in terms of like matching intervals, et cetera. And also, somewhat like a guarantee and like liveness, as well as, kind of like a guarantee within finality where like you don't have like your entire order or, your entire position like reneged because there was a small fork, et cetera.
Bingo.
And all the, DeFi related, kind of like ecosystem also has that, you'd be working around this kind of core infrastructure to make it a truly, scalable and also effective kind of like a financial ecosystem. So this means that with these type of like native modules like Oracle, like order book, et cetera, you can on top of it build a lot of different types of like smart contracts or different types of application that you don't necessarily have to worry too much about all the like gas fluctuations, et cetera. And kind of have guarantee that your application is going to be up to date and live. I think those are like definitely like the most important aspect.
How does one even? Again, this is way out of my pay grade, Eric. Like I wouldn't even know where to begin. But how do you start building these blockchains and exchange specific protocols and bits of technology? Like where do you even start? Again, I'm not a coder, so this is so nascent to me. But like, if someone did have a technological background and was like, okay, I understand algos, I understand order books, I understand the ins and outs of transactions and more specifically exchanges, like where do you get started? How do you implement this?
It's pretty straightforward, to be honest. You basically start off with like a blockchain infrastructure that's like pretty valuable. Obviously, if there isn't such like customizable like SDKs or like infrastructure tools, like it would be a lot more painful.
Right.
But thankfully, like there's Cosmos SDK, Tendermint, etc., that can basically resolve like 60% of like the consensus level or like the core level like complexities.
Gotcha.
And you simply like customize a lot of logic within the core SDK itself, and mess around with like different types of modules and implement like the logics that you're looking for. And obviously, like there's definitely a lot more like granularity and issues behind it. But getting started with like a 0 to 1 step, that's actually super straightforward, thanks to a lot of the existing tools and infrastructure around it, and mainly thanks to Cosmos SDK.
Interesting. Super cool there. I mean, you made that sound a hell of a lot easier than it is. I'm sure it's absolute nightmare fuel, but we'll take your word for it there. But yeah, with all honesty, it must be absolutely insane. So let's take a sort of a deeper look into Injective, walking through a couple of the specific projects that you guys are working on, some of the ecosystems that you're diving into, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff like getting investments from Mark Cuban, Jump Crypto, Pantera, and all those lads. In Dallas, of course.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, if you asked me this question like 3 months ago or like half a year ago, it would have been super easy. I was like, oh, like there's Helix and there's a couple of other ones. A lot of the adoption and traction are like centered around Helix. Or the exchange module, et cetera, processing, like, I don't know, like maybe 12 or like $11 billion to date for the past year or two, yada, yada, yada. But if you, but now, especially like, in like July, August, and September, there has just been, crazy amount of, interest and, traction for a lot of the, dApps are, building natively within Injective and deploying on top of Injective, where I'm, constantly trying to catch up on like what all the builders are working on, what they're doing. Even off the top of my head, there's Talus, which is a highly successful, NFT platform at this point with a bunch of volume. Exactly, how much it's a better question to ask Talus, but like it's certainly beating out a lot of the major L1s in terms of adoption and traction. There's obviously quite a few other like native projects. I think like Black Panther, they're working on like asset management protocol and generating like real yield strategies. There's Astroport, which is quite exciting, like AMM protocol with like native order book based LP and liquidity, like provisioning and swapping. There's quite a lot, to be honest. And QWERTY, ING Dojo, like exchange apps. And then there's a Frontrunner, which is kind of like a sports betting like a gaming app. And then like recently there's also like, like Aliens on Injective, which is working on quite a few things, I think beyond just like NFT. And there's also like, I think like a few like productivity apps even. But yeah, like it's just been like a lot of, developer interest and deployments and a lot of traction behind them as well.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like the sentiment's changing. I feel like, I don't want to say the bear market's over because it's not, but I feel like the sentiment at least is on the rise. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, like we certainly felt like witness or basically the blunt of it, especially because like I feel like during like a quieter, calmer market, like currently where we are right now, that's when like signal to noise ratio is like the most optimal, and there's a lot more like merit based filtering and a lot more like capital efficient, cost efficient, like onboarding and traction. If you have, like a strong reason for developers to be interested to be building on top of you.
100%. Great point there. Eric, we got to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to response to the show. But when we get back, we got to talk about a couple fun things. You mentioned Frontrunner. I know you've been buzzing on Frontrunner. You have some hilarious tweets about Frontrunner, and I'm a sports gambler myself, big sports fan. We got to get into that. Before we do, huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends of CryptoNews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. I absolutely love Prime XBT. They offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. After making your first deposit, 50%, that is 50% of that first deposit will be credited to your account as a bonus that can be used as additional collateral to open positions. That is Crypto News 50. The promo code is Crypto News 50, all one word, to take advantage of this offer and receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Eric. Talk to me about Frontrunner. This looks, candidly speaking here, I didn't know about them until I was doing prep for the show. Again, you have to do what you got to do. I always lurk my guest Twitter account. It's one of the best spots for some good talking points. Looked at them. They seem sweet. What's the deal with Frontrunner? Their Twitter bio is the #1 sports prediction app. It's Tinder for sports fans. That is hilarious. Tell me more about this. Why does this get you going?
Well, from my perspective, it's a very interesting utilization of a lot of the exchange module primitives, especially on the derivative side, because effectively the way that Frontrunner works is that they take like a existing financial primitive or like a derivatives instrument and really turning it into something that is applicable to like a much more broader audience. Effectively speaking, they utilize like this binary option primitive, which is like a binary outcome that has a very, very light reliance on Oracle, but at the same time it has a lot of flexibility on kind of like binary outcomes, which is perfect for sports, etc. But at the same time, there's also expiry futures, which is obviously like non-binary outcome, but at the same time it's a it's a fixed duration for or guaranteed like a resolution. And utilizing these primitives, they turn it into like a full-on like a betting or like a gaming platform where it's it looks and feels like any type of sports betting platform that they're familiar with, but in reality, it's fully decentralized with a lot of very, very powerful like liquidity aggregation and synergetic relationship with liquidity providers. Because I don't know much about like the betting or gaming industry, but one thing I do know is that liquidity fragmentation is extremely palpable and apparent. And one of the things that Frontrunner can do is to have this global platform where like anyone can provide liquidity, anyone can introduce order flow into like a nexus of events, and provide probably the best possible slippage and also the fairest possible pricing for the overall market. But when I actually started using it, that's when I realized like how little I know about sports.
I see. And where does the Tinder part come into play there? It said the bio is #1 sports prediction app. And again, sports prediction apps are different than sports betting apps. But where does the Tinder for sports fans come into play?
I mean, it's a similar type of like abstract mechanism as like Tinder, right? It's a binary choice on any type of like potential events or potential objects.
Gotcha.
So for Frontrunner's case, it's like for every single sports event, you can have a binary bet on it. So that would be betting that one team would win and the other team would lose, or the reverse, right? Whereas for Tinder's case, it's like making a choice on yes to this person or no to that person.
Swipe right or swipe left.
So both of them are fairly similar.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in mechanisms. There are some other products that like Frontrunner offer that's a little bit more interesting, like throughout the entire season, who is the winner, etc.
Yeah.
And you like speculate on the odds for that. So that's not necessarily like like a binary outcome per se, but it's a fairly similar mechanism as well.
Gotcha. We got to take a step back and go through Helix. Are you guys investors in Helix? Like, what's your deal with Helix? Why do you? I mean, I understand they're a great company with really good tech, but what gets you going about Helix so much? I see them all over your Twitter.
Oh, it's a flagship, exchange application built by Injective Labs.
Gotcha. Makes sense. There you go. So yeah, give me the quick TLDR on Helix, and then we'll jump into it a little more.
Yeah, I think it's just like one of the most vanilla in a sense, or one of the most native ways to interact with the exchange module within Injective. It has like the full-fledged exchange experience, but in reality, the entire infrastructure and backend, the overall like trading experience or interaction experience is fully decentralized, self-custodial and on-chain. So there's a great amount of work trying to optimize your user experience to converge it with what they're used to with, let's say, like Binance, Coinbase, etc. But at the same time, fully preserving the fully on-chain and decentralized nature of things. Essentially, it's a very, very strong showcase of the like early capabilities of, Injective as a blockchain with some of the, even just basic utilization of modules built on top of Injective. So even to this date, like it's been, highly popular with a lot of, like volumes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, it also inspired a lot of developers to dig further into Injective and, build more exciting products than Helix, within the ecosystem.
Helix is big for B2B, is it not? Aren't a lot of, actual exchanges trying to snag some of the tech from Helix and implement it into their own?
Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of, other like exchange applications because, Helix doesn't have, sovereignty over, it doesn't, like have exclusivity over like the liquidity and flow within its platform. So a lot of other applications can also build similar offerings, tapping into the same type of liquidity, into the same type of flow. And this is obviously a very, very useful tool for like various exchanges and stuff like that. I think there's also a couple of like, Web2 companies, adopting the same. But I think another fairly interesting part is that like there's also a lot of institutional adoption, contributing liquidity to Helix and, other exchange applications within Injective with, types of like institutional programs, et cetera.
Totally feel that. I'd love to jump into the investing side of things. I mean, you dropped out of school, you started companies, you've done a whole lot at such a young age. What was it like getting investments from Mark Cuban, Jump Crypto, Pantera? I mean, you guys also have a $150 million ecosystem fund. Like, walk me through the ins and outs of actually raising money and becoming a VC yourself. Did you ever dream of this as a kid? Did it just sort of happen? Some of those conversations that happened, what are some of the biggest takeaways from your career as a VC as well?
Yeah, I think for like the ecosystem fund and the more recent like Vestal Capital, I think it's more like never really wanted to be a VC per se, but there were just like opportunity to present itself and basically like decide to synergize like the resource. So for ecosystem fund, it's one of the primary drivers for the recent adoption and developer interest for Injective. And one of the things we saw prior to the ecosystem fund was that there were a lot of like institutional players and VCs, et cetera, that are trying to explore like potential opportunities within Injective or betting on like the network itself, et cetera. But there just weren't like that much established like discovery process or basically like opportunities in a more general sense. And by synergizing all of their kind of deal flows, effectively speaking, and bringing them all together to identify, it's like, oh, like it's peak bear right now, but don't assume that there's no like VCs or like funds out there investing.
Yeah.
And it obviously helps the VC a lot because it also helps them identify opportunities at scale. Brings all their resources and flows together and helping each other with like due diligence, but more importantly synergizing like the resources to back the best possible projects out there. In Vestal's case, I think it's another like a type of opportunity where like both my like partners over time just run into a lot of like angel deals, et cetera, and it's a lot easier to like bring them all into one and synergize them with like support and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Because we realize that like we do give out like personal checks here and there, but like we oftentimes are very, very wary about doing so because we end up spending a lot of time like helping them basically helping them build their product, giving them a lot of technical advice, and sometimes even giving them like a full-on rule book of like, oh, like if you like implement it this way and this way, like you can get the product out within like this amount of time and stuff like that. Because we've been there and we know exactly like how it can be built or like some of the potential blockers here and there, and we just realized like it's much easier to like merge all the resources and coordinate them in an efficient way to bring them all into one entity.
Very, very cool. Combos with Mark Cuban, what was that like? Did you speak to him at all when you guys did the race?
Yeah.
How was that? Cool dude.
I think it was like very, very interesting. He basically, like you would expect someone like Mark Cuban to have limits of attention towards like all of his like leads. Not even saying like like his portfolio companies, but like all the potential projects that reach out to him or like helping out with like existing like portfolio projects basically, dealing with the needs and wants, or like, requests for support from like his like portfolio of, I don't know how many hundred companies, but he's arguably one of the most, responsive, one of the most prolific, and one of the most productive person we've ever seen, because he would, always almost like respond to any type of our email, even our, very, very first email ever to Mark Cuban. And, actually spend a lot of time, diving deep into understanding, what we're working on, and, how Injective works, or like how the blockchain works, or how it's, able to, provide all the native primitives for all the projects. And yeah, like it's been pleasant, working with him the entire time.
That's very cool. Let's jump into the state of DeFi. This is, again, DeFi's been a little wishy-washy, over the last year or so. We had the big boom, 2020, 2021, sort of not fell off a cliff per se, but definitely volume slowed down. To my knowledge, still very similar. What's the current state of DeFi? Where does the industry stand? Where's it going? Any future really cool use cases do you see? In your summary, what is the current state of DeFi?
I think the current state of DeFi is heavily like utility or like merit driven. Oftentimes, I would say like during like 2021 or 2022, it's been heavily focused around products and tools that tends to avoid the question of what is the utility behind this, or like what is the inherent value prop. But now, if someone goes to me and tells me to explain, what are the current trends within DeFi, or like what are the interesting, or well adopted, tools out there, it's a very much of a theological flow on this, here's why people need it, and here's why it makes sense to have it. And I think one of the interesting, or like one of example of this would be like the recent trend around like liquid staking derivatives and the adoptions around it, and also the restaking economics. It's a very, very easy value prop, and it's a very, very clear and palpable to users. And like that's been like kind of like the I would say like the consensus, or like the culture, I would say, around like a lot of the ecosystem projects within Injective as well. It's like I think one of the exciting lending protocols called Neptune is working on like a lending application on top of Injective. And the value prop for a lending protocol is clear, but for another lending protocol, oftentimes people can't really answer it. But thanks to a lot of the Injective native infrastructure and some of the exciting works that Neptune did, it's very, very defensible, because what Neptune does is that it effectively allows for the collateralization of various type of assets, but more importantly, a lot of abstract assets like derivatives positions, open orders, etc. And once you create like an account through a Neptune, you can essentially like collateralize or borrow open orders, perp positions, or any type of like spot assets, etc. And what that means from a user-facing perspective is that you can effectively build out like an entirely like FTX like experience, rest in peace, or like a portfolio margining experience that everyone just knows and loves, where you have much more flexible risk calculation. You have much more kind of gracious margining that's very much sensible. Where if you have like a long position within like a spot asset itself, and you cover it or you hedge it with like a short position, typically you'd have to like very, very actively manage it in order to make sure your position doesn't blow up. And more importantly, it's very, very expensive for you to do it, because it means that you have to post enough collateral to establish a short position.
Yeah.
But for like what would have cost like $1,000 worth of capital, you can easily achieve that with $100 or $200 worth of capital, which is kind of like the ethos of like a more efficient infrastructure.
Touche. I love that. Any other areas of crypto, Eric, that get you going? Doesn't have to be DeFi or exchanges, whatever. What did you think of Friends Tech, the Grayscale, SEC, Big Dub? Like, what else is front of mind for you right now? What gets you going?
Yeah, I think Friend Tech's user experience, I was absolutely astonished by it. It's it's one of the early like demonstrations of the potential behind account abstraction. So that's always extremely exciting to me. I really, really love like how Friend Tech onboards users, and this is probably like the start of something very, very exciting for the entire space. And, it's something that, we've been working on as well.
How so with the onboarding? Do you mean with just sort of creating the scarcity aspect, with the need of codes to get in, the actual onboarding once you're in the app? In what regard do you enjoy the onboarding?
You can create transactions with just Face ID or your Google account and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. So the simplicity and, lack of friction.
Yeah. I think, one of the biggest pain points for crypto or like blockchain for longest time for people arguing against it was, the difficulty in onboarding, saying that, people, are incapable of managing private keys on their own, or it's way too painful a process, etc. But I think, with this, it demonstrates it's that's not going to be a problem very, very soon.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I want a couple more, and this has been a treat, Eric. I'm very, very grateful and appreciative of your time here. On the personal side of things, you are a young lad who executes and does a shit ton, has a lot on his shoulders. What's your day-to-day look like? Are you in the office 5-6 days a week? You putting in 16-hour shifts? Are you a faster, cold plunge sauna? Walk me through some of the non-crypto, just actual human-to-human, P2P Eric stuff. What's your average day look like?
Yeah, I would say it's dominated by just spending time in office. There's not a lot of reasons to leave the office per se. I think one interesting thing is initially I was going on a diet that's basically just one meal a day.
Yeah.
Because I realized that at least for me personally, eating less than enough during one meal is a lot harder than just not eating at all and just concentrating that within one very, very full meal.
Agreed.
And I know a lot of people can't do it, so I think it's just what I found out that works best for me. But later on, I kind of realized this is also really great for longevity and health as well.
Yeah.
Where long as you have a very good caloric balance and nutritional balance, eating once a day or 1.2, 1.5 a day is typically a fairly healthy experience. So that's one of those. Yeah, honestly, it's especially in times like these, it's fairly dominated, and just
by work,
wake up, go to office, and I would leave office, go to sleep.
So you're grinding. You're spending 15 hours a day at the office.
Yeah, give or take. A little bit more, a little less. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Eric, this has been a treat, man. Before we wrap up, any hot takes? Any Eric hot takes? I mean, you gave me one little one with the fasting. I mean, again, you and I are in the same yacht there. When I'm in good boy Matt wholesome mode, I have one seismic meal at around 5 p.m., 4:30 p.m. I don't get hungry throughout the day. Maybe the stomach will growl for a little at 12:31. And then, from 2 to 5, I feel like I'm Elon Musk with my focus. I just dial in, I'm the CEO of the dial-in factory. And then after my big meal, I go for a walk. But any other hot takes, health, wealth, happiness, space, AI, anything that's getting you going or that you're curious about or disagree with at the moment?
Yeah, I think the hot take is don't try to hop around friends.
Yeah.
Basically, we've seen a lot of people, and especially, cycle after cycle, people leave, people join back in, and people leave again. And this is especially applicable for a lot of, industries and, specific players, et cetera, where they try to be on top of a lot of trends, which is, very, very encouraging. But at the same time, overdoing it by, trying to be the expert on every single new trend, which we've noticed. So yeah, just keep our work on it. Whatever trend that it may be, no matter how quiet or how, unattractive it is right now, because given the, fluctuations of various narrative and trends, there's almost a, very strong probabilistic guarantee that whatever you're working on is going to, be a narrative over, within a very, very short time.
Keep grinding. Eric, you crushed this, man. Appreciate you coming on. Before you go, please let our listeners know where they can find you and Injective Labs online and on socials.
Yeah, I think Twitter is the best place to start. For me, it's at Eric Injective. And for Injective, the website is the best place, which is injective.com.
And the other, while I have Eric's Twitter in front of me, at Vessel VC, at Injective Labs, like he said, and at Helix app. Hit up his Twitter. It's absolute fire. Check it out. And of course, hit up the Injective website as well. Eric, appreciate you coming on, man. Would love to have you in for round 2. And next time I'm in Manhattan, I'll be hitting you up. Maybe I'll pull you out of the office for a nice dinner. That'd be a treat.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Folks, what an incredible episode with Eric Chen from Injective Labs, CEO and janitor of Injective, as he likes to call himself. He was dropping knowledge bombs left, right, and center. Huge episode, learned a ton, got some homework to do. We love to see that. If you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope you did, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. Eustace, my amazing sound editor, appreciate you as always. And back to listeners, love you guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.